He carried her clan's blade to defend her. Clueless, he just agreed to be her husband. Kalen coughed, the dry, thin air scratching at his lungs. Dust coated everything, a fine red grit that clung to his torn flight suit and the open wounds on his arm. He'd crawled out of the wreckage 2 sols ago, a burning heap of scavenged parts and naive hope, only to collapse near a structure that looked like petrified bone reaching for a sky the color of bruised copper. Now creatures watched him, not human, tall, slender, with limbs that bent at unexpected angles and skin that shimmered faintly, like heat haze over sand. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace that felt ancient, their faces shielded by hoods or natural ridges, making expression unreadable. One stood apart, slightly taller, wearing robes the color of twilight. She was speaking in a language of clicks and sibilants, and the resonance was sharp like broken glass in his mind. He instinctively flinched. They had found him beside the ancestral rest, a place of profound stillness and power he hadn't recognized. He'd just been trying to shelter from the twin suns. One of them had pointed at the long, sheathed object, lying partially buried in the sand near where he'd fallen. It looked like a sword. He'd touched it, thinking it might be useful, though he hadn't the strength to lift it. A mistake, apparently. A big one. The one in twilight robes gestured, and 2 others, bulkier, moved towards him. He tried to push himself up, but his ribs screamed in protest. His comm unit was dust. His med kit was almost depleted. Survival was a rapidly shrinking probability. The twilight-robed one approached, her movements silent. She knelt and he saw her face. It wasn't human. Smooth, unlined, with large, dark eyes that held an unnerving depth, and faint patterns of light that pulsed just beneath the surface of her skin near her temples. They shifted from soft blue to intense white as she observed him. Her gaze was steady, intelligent, utterly devoid of apparent emotion. It made him feel like an insect under a microscope. She spoke again, the clicks softer this time, accompanied by a low hum of resonance that didn't hurt, but settled deep in his chest. A strange vibration. "You have violated the silence of the first ground," she said. Her voice was low, resonant, the common tongue spoken with precise, alien inflection. "Your touch defiled the hallowed rest." He managed a weak, sarcastic chuckle. "Yeah, look, I'm sorry. Didn't see the do not touch sign. Just trying not to die out here." No reaction on her face. The light patterns pulsed faster. Yellow now. Death is the expected consequence of such violation. Yet, the ancestors did not claim you. She glanced at the sheathed blade still lying near him. The blade did not sing you to dust. He followed her gaze. The sword. Right. His hand tingled where he touched the hilt. The blade of lineage, carried only by the sworn protector of the air, during the rite of passage. She stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. Its proximity to your defilement and your survival complicates the purity. She stood, her height even more imposing now. "I am Lyra of the First Ridge, heir to the Vriath clans. My right is upon me. Your presence disrupts the pattern." The light patterns on her face flared bright white for a moment, then settled back to a soft blue. "The elders decree a binding ritual. You will be presented." He had no idea what any of that meant. Binding? Right? Air? He just wanted water and a ride off this rock. Binding? "Look, lady, I don't know your customs. I just need help." She turned, her robes flowing like water. "Ignorance does not absolve the breach. Prepare him," she commanded the others in her clicking tongue. They moved forward. Kalen braced himself, but they weren't rough. They were careful, supporting him as they lifted him, their strength surprising. As they moved him away from the crash site and the fallen blade, he felt a faint, unpleasant pull, like a connection being stretched thin. He looked back at the blade. It just lay there. Lyra watched him go, her expression unreadable, the blue light patterns calm. They didn't take him to a prison, but to a low, sprawling structure built into the side of a sandstone ridge. Inside, the air was cooler, filled with the scent of dry herbs and something like ozone. He was treated not by doctors as he knew them, but by figures who used glowing tools and resonant hums that somehow knitted flesh and soothed pain. The resonance, he was learning, was a fundamental part of their biology, or technology, maybe both. It pulsed around him constantly, a silent, invisible pressure. He felt marginally better physically, but mentally he was reeling. They kept him in a simple chamber, not locked, but observed. Lyra came to see him after his wounds were mostly closed. She stood across the room, her posture rigid. "Your body shows resilience," she stated. The healing resonance took hold swiftly. "Yeah, well, I've been through worse," he mumbled, rubbing the faint lines where his cuts had been. "Doesn't explain why I'm here, or what this binding ritual is." She moved closer, stopping a few feet away. The light patterns on her face shifted. A pale violet. The rite of passage for the heir involves a pilgrimage to the first ground, in resonance with the ancestral blade. This resonance confirms the lineage and the heir's fitness to lead. She paused. Only the bonded protector sworn to the heir and her lineage may approach the blade during this sacred phase. Your touch, it disrupted the pattern. Disrupted by touching a sword? He asked, incredulous. It is not merely a sword, she said, her voice tight with what he now recognized as suppressed frustration or annoyance. It is the focus of generations, the vessel of ancestral resonance. By touching it at that moment, in that place, you interjected yourself into a sacred frequency. Okay, so I broke your magic sword ceremony. Why does that mean I'm bound? The ancestral blade responds to lineage and to oath. Your touch, while an intrusion, also created a momentary resonance spike, unlike any recorded. The elders interpret this as a sign, a breach demanding correction through integration. She looked directly at him, her dark eyes holding his gaze. The correction is the binding ritual. It requires the one who breached the sacred space, who touched the blade, to be ritually bound to the heir whose right was disrupted. You must fulfill the role the blade acknowledged. Role? What role? The role of the sworn protector, the carrier of the blade, she stated simply, as if describing the weather. In our tongue, the word for carrier of the blade during the rite is also the word for husband. Kalen stared at her. The faint blue light patterns on her skin were steady, but he felt a jolt of pure disbelief that resonated through the air, making the subtle humming of the room seem to vibrate with his shock. Husband? He repeated, the word foreign and absurd in this alien setting. You're saying, because I touched your sacred sword, I'm now your husband? Lyra inclined her head slightly. The ritual requires it, to restore the balance you disrupted. The blade does not err. It acknowledged your touch, however, ignorant its intent. Therefore, you are ritually declared the carrier, the protector, husband. His mind raced. Crash, stranded, rescued, and now, married? To an alien he'd met yesterday? That's insane, he exclaimed. You can't just declare someone your husband because they touched a sharp object. What about consent? What about, knowing each other? Lyra's posture stiffened further. Our ways are not based on the fleeting emotions or transient agreements of your species. They are based on pattern, on resonance, on the unbreakable oaths. To the ancestors, the blade has spoken. The elders have decreed. Her tone shifted, became slightly sharper. Know this, Kalen. My position as heir is not absolute. There are others who view my right as vulnerable, who see your presence as a contaminant to be purged. The Gore bloodline seeks to invalidate my claim, to seize control of the shrines and the migration routes. Your binding ritual, it forces my hand. It either solidifies my position by integrating the unexpected pattern, or it provides the Gore with the pretext they need to challenge me openly. You are now inextricably linked to my fate, and the fate of my people. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the arid world's temperature. He hadn't just touched a sacred object. He'd stumbled into a political powder keg and, through sheer cosmic idiocy, lit the fuse by getting accidentally married. The reality of his situation settled over Kalen like the perpetual dust. He wasn't a prisoner, but he was definitely trapped, bound by a ritual he didn't understand to a woman he didn't know, caught in the political machinations of an alien species. Lyra began his instruction. It wasn't gentle. She was patient in explaining Vareth customs, history, and the significance of the ancestral blade and the shrines, but she was utterly demanding in her expectation of his compliance and learning. He was treated with a strange mix of reverence due to the blade's apparent acknowledgement of him and suspicion due to his alien nature and disruptive arrival. He learned about the Verith resonance, not just a physical hum, but a form of communication, of emotional transparency. It was why their faces seemed unreadable. Their true feelings pulsed in the light patterns and the subtle shifts in their personal resonance fields. Lyra's was a tightly controlled frequency, precise and cool. When he was near her, he felt a persistent, underlying hum that sometimes sharpened with annoyance or softened almost imperceptibly with something he couldn't name. He tried to explain human marriage, the concept of choice, love, partnership built over time. She listened with that same steady, unblinking gaze, the light patterns on her temples remaining a cool blue. "Your customs are inefficient," she stated finally. "Resonance does not require years to align. The blade confirms the alignment required for the path." "But we don't have resonance," he argued. "We choose based on—" He trailed off, thinking of his own failed relationships, the complexities and messiness of human connection. "Based on feelings, shared interests, compatibility?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Feelings are transient, interests diverge. Compatibility is a state, not a bond. The blade defines the bond required for lineage survival and ancestral harmony." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So, because your magic sword likes my touch, we're soulmates by default?" A flicker, perhaps amusement, in her deep eyes, and the light patterns pulsed violet for a split second. A crude approximation, but not entirely inaccurate in its outcome. Their bonding ceremony was set for the next cycle. It involved a journey to a central shrine, a complex ritual under the twin suns, and Kaelin having to carry the blade of lineage, a surprisingly heavy, sheathed length of dark, resonant material. He still didn't fully grasp the implications beyond the obvious accidentally married the alien heir part. He also became acutely aware of the other members of the Gur bloodline, visually distinct by subtle variations in their shimmering skin patterns or bone structure, watched him and Lyra with unconcealed hostility. Their resonance felt like static, unpleasant, and grating. They questioned Lyra's suitability to lead, whispered about contamination and broken tradition. Kaelin was the living embodiment of their grievances. One evening, as they were preparing for the journey, a Gur elder, his resonance a low growl, confronted Lyra within Kaelin's hearing. "The outsider defiles the path, Lyra of the First Ridge. The blade's strange song is a harbinger of ill fortune, not a blessing. You cling to a broken ritual, hoping to validate your weak claim." Lyra's resonance flared, a sharp, protective spike that made Kaelin instinctively step closer to her. Her physical posture remained calm, but the light patterns on her face turned a vivid, pulsating white. "My claim is validated by the ancestors' will, as interpreted through the blade's response," Lyra replied, her voice low and firm. "Your attempts to twist the pattern for your own ambition will not succeed, Cole of the Bitter Root." "Ambition seeks purity," Cole countered, his resonance intensifying, filling the space with a sense of aggressive pressure. "Your protector is a walking desecration. The true right cannot proceed with him carrying the blade. We will challenge the binding. The ancestors will see your error." Kaelin felt a surge of protectiveness, unexpected and fierce. He wasn't just some accidental prop in their ritual anymore. This was about her. "Hey," he cut in, stepping fully beside Lyra. "Lay off. She knows what she's doing, and I'm not going anywhere." Cole's dark eyes fixed on Kaelin, the static resonance turning venomous. "The off-worlder speaks of things he cannot comprehend. His ignorance is as vast as the void between stars." He looked back at Lyra. "The challenge is made, heir. At the central shrine, before the final binding, your protector, the accidental blade carrier, will face the test. May the ancestors judge your folly." With a final, grating burst of resonance, Cole turned and left, his entourage melting into the shadows. Kaelin looked at Lyra. Her light patterns were still bright white, slowly fading back to blue. Her lips were a thin line. "Test?" Kaelin asked. "What test?" Lyra finally looked at him, her eyes holding a flicker of something Kaelin couldn't read. Maybe resignation, maybe a grudging respect. Your presence is a disruption, she repeated, the familiar refrain taking on a new weight. The girl demand the disruption be resolved through conflict. At the central shrine, before the completion of the rite, you will fight for my right to carry the blade. You will fight for my claim. You will fight as my husband. The journey to the central shrine was a test of endurance. They traveled across vast arid plains under the relentless twin suns, following ancient migration paths known only to the Vriath. Kalen walked beside Lyra, the heavy sheathed blade of lineage, slung across his back. Its presence was a constant low hum against his spine, a subtle vibration that seemed to sync with his own heartbeat, and more strangely, with Lyra's presence beside him. The resonance between them was growing stronger, more noticeable. It wasn't just an external pressure anymore. He felt subtle echoes of her emotional state, a cool determination, an underlying current of apprehension she hid expertly from the others. Sometimes, when they rested at night under skies thick with unfamiliar constellations, he would catch her watching him. Her light patterns would soften, shift to colors he hadn't seen during their formal interactions. A fleeting emerald, a deep, swirling indigo. The vulnerability hinted at in those moments was a stark contrast to her usual rigid control. He was still reeling from the husband reveal and the impending fight, but the shared hardship, the quiet moments under alien stars, the simple act of relying on each other for survival on this harsh world, was forging something new between them. He found himself watching her too, admiring her resilience, her quiet strength. He asked her about her life as heir, the weight of tradition she carried. She spoke of lineage, of the sacred duty to the ancestors, of the burden of maintaining the balance of their society. My life is not my own, she said one evening, her gaze fixed on the horizon. It belongs to the Vriath, to the pattern. That's a heavy load, he said, thinking of his own past, the expectations he'd failed to meet, the reasons he ended up scavenging in the void. You ever wish it was different? Her light patterns pulsed a soft, almost imperceptible gold. Wishing is irrelevant. The path is laid. He wasn't a warrior. His past life involved healing, not fighting. He was good with a scalpel, not a sword. I'm not sure I'm the best guy to fight for your claim, he admitted. My combat skills are rusty, non-existent, mostly. Lyra finally looked at him, a hint of something unreadable in her eyes. The blade chose you, or perhaps the ancestors guided your hand to it. The path is strange. It does not always choose the obvious warrior. She tapped the sheathed blade on his back. Its true strength is not metal, Kalen. It is resonance. It is the will of generations. You carry them. He still didn't get it, but the weight on his shoulders suddenly felt heavier. As they neared the central shrine, the landscape grew more dramatic. Towering rock formations, deep canyons, and a palpable sense of ancient power resonating from the earth itself. The Gore faction was there. Cole and his warriors stood before the entrance to the shrine, their forms sharp against the red rock. Their resonance was a wall of hostility and challenge. Lyra's clan, her supporters, gathered behind her, their resonance a mix of anxiety and loyalty. Kalen stood beside Lyra, the blade feeling impossibly heavy now. They demand trial by combat, Lyra stated, her voice calm, though her light patterns were a vibrant, steady white. My champion against theirs. Since you carry the blade as my intended, you are my champion. Kalen swallowed hard. This was really happening. Him, the accidental tourist, fighting a professional alien warrior for the fate of a culture he barely understood. Because he touched a sword, right. My pleasure, he muttered under his breath, a dry humor surfacing despite the fear. Cole stepped forward. His chosen champion was a hulking Vriath warrior, his armor crude but effective, his resonance a raw, brutal force. The accidental blade carrier will face Hector, Cole announced, his voice echoing off the cliff. If he falls, the binding is broken, Lyra's claim invalidated, and the ancestors have judged against her. Lyra looked at Kalen, her eyes, deep and steady, held a silent plea, a dependence that was new. The blade, she said, her voice barely a whisper meant only for him. Unsheath it, feel its song. Kalen nodded, his hands trembling slightly, as he reached for the hilt of the blade of lineage. The sheath was surprisingly light, As he drew the blade, a low, resonant hum filled the air, louder than any he had felt before. The blade itself wasn't metal in the human sense. It was made of the same dark, resonant material as the sheath, but the edges glowed with an internal light that pulsed with the hum. Holding it, Kalen felt a surge of energy, ancient and powerful, thrumming up his arm. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive with ancestral resonance. The air crackled with the competing resonances of the two factions. Kalen stood opposite Hector, the Gore champion, the blade of lineage heavy and thrumming in his hand. Hector radiated pure aggression, his form tense, ready to spring. Kalen felt a strange calm settle over him, not his own, but the deep, steady frequency emanating from the blade. It was like standing in a quiet pool in the middle of a storm. Lyra's resonance, a thread of bright, anxious white, was tied to his own through the blade. He could feel her hope, her fear, her absolute reliance on him in this moment. This wasn't just about his survival anymore. Lyra had shown him glimpses of her world, the weight of her duty, the quiet dignity of her people struggling on this harsh planet. He wouldn't let them be swallowed by the Gore's power grab. Hector lunged first, surprisingly fast for his size, a heavy-bladed weapon whistling through the air. Kalen reacted instinctively, not with trained combat moves, but guided by the blade's resonance. It felt like the weapon moved him, not the other way around. He parried the blow, the humming blade meeting Hector's weapon, with a shower of sparks and a jarring resonance spike that made his teeth ache. Hector roared, pressing the attack. Kalen wasn't strong enough to match him blow for blow, but the blade felt unnaturally light in his hand, flowing through defensive arcs. He ducked, weaved, letting the blade absorb and deflect the worst of the impacts. He focused on the resonance. Hector's was a simple, brutal frequency, easy to anticipate once he tuned into it. The blade's resonance, however, was complex, layered with countless echoes. It seemed to guide his movements, showing him openings, subtle shifts in Hector's balance. He saw his chance. Hector overextended, leaving his side exposed. The blade seemed to sing, urging Kalen forward. He didn't slash or stab in a human way. He moved the blade in a swift, complex pattern, its glowing edge not cutting, but disrupting Hector's energy field. His resonance. Hector stumbled back with a cry, clutching his side. It wasn't a physical wound, but something deeper, a resonant shock that momentarily incapacitated him. Call bellowed in outrage. He fights with trickery. He fights with the blade. Lyra's voice rang out, clear and strong. As the ancestors decreed, Hector, regaining his composure, charged again, rage replacing strategy. Kalen was tired, his untrained muscles screaming, but the blade's thrumming sustained him. He parried another wild blow, then remembering something Lyra had told him about VARF pressure points and resonance channels, he used the tip of the blade to tap swiftly against Hector's arm joint. It wasn't a forceful strike, but the targeted resonant pulse sent a jolt through Hector. His arm went limp, his weapon clattering to the ground. He stood there, panting, defeated. The air fell silent, except for the hum of the blade in Kalen's hand and the collective resonance of the VARF watching. Call's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. Lyra's light patterns flared with triumph and relief. Kalen lowered the blade, its glowing edge fading slightly. He was spent, adrenaline draining away, leaving him shaky. He'd won. He'd won a ritual alien sword fight because a magic blade helped him. Lyra walked towards him, her movements fluid and purposeful. She stopped before him, her eyes searching his. Her resonance was a wave of complex emotion, pride, gratitude, something deeper and more vulnerable. "You fought well, blade carrier," she said to her voice soft, for his ears only. "You did not falter, just channeling the magic sword," he managed, offering a weak, tired smile. Lyra reached out, her three-fingered hand gently touching the blade. As her skin made contact, the blade's resonance surged, connecting his hand, the blade, and her. He felt a jolt, then a wave of overwhelming warmth and connection flood his senses. It wasn't just emotional, it was physical, a deep resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through his very bones, syncing with Lyra's frequency. Her light patterns exploded into a kaleidoscope of brilliant colors, flowing across her face and neck, mirroring the swirling energy. Kalen felt within himself. This wasn't just resonance. It was emerging, a powerful ancient current, pulling them together. The crowd's resonance shifted, from tension to awe, to a low, reverent chant. Call and the Gore looked stunned, their hostility momentarily forgotten. In the face of this raw, undeniable display of resonant power, the blade sang between them, a clear high note of completion. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, reflecting the myriad colors of her light patterns. He felt her surprise, her vulnerability, her own response to the intensity of the merging resonance. The connection was intoxicating, overwhelming. It felt like every cell in his body was aligning with hers, a perfect, resonant match. Their shared resonance intensified, a physical pull drawing them closer. The air grew thick with energy. He felt the shift in her, the shedding of her rigid control, revealing a raw, pulsating core of need. In response, mirroring his own burgeoning feelings, the fight, the near-death experience, the deep resonance, it had broken something open between them. Right here in front of everyone, the ritual wasn't just symbolic anymore. It was becoming something breathtakingly real. The resonant merging intensified, a wave washing over Kalen, stripping away his exhaustion, his fear, his confusion. It wasn't just a feeling. It was like information, emotion, and pure biological need, transmitted directly, bypassing language. Lyra's presence flooded his senses, her quiet strength, the deep current of responsibility that defined her, the sudden startling vulnerability that the resonance laid bare. He felt her body's response mirroring his own, a reciprocal awakening triggered by the fight, the blade, the overwhelming confirmation of their bond. In the heart of the sacred shrine, surrounded by the silent, awestruck Vareth, their joined hands on the singing blade became the nexus of a potent, ancient force. It wasn't planned, wasn't a part of the rigid ceremony Lyra had described, not in this raw, exposed way. It was the aftermath of the challenge, the proof of the blade's judgment made manifest in their shared resonance. Lyra's eyes fluttered closed for a moment, her perfect features softened, her light patterns a frantic, beautiful dance of color. He felt her gasp, not with air, but with shared resonance. The pull became physical, undeniable. They swayed towards each other, drawn by an invisible force. The blade between their hands felt like a channel, pouring energy from the earth, from the ancestors, from their own rapidly aligning frequencies, into a single burning point. He released the blade, letting it fall softly back into its sheath, which materialized near them, seemingly of its own accord. His hands went to her, one cupping her cheek, the other finding its way to her waist. Her skin felt smooth, warm, the light patterns pulsing beneath his touch. She leaned into him, her head tilting back slightly, her eyes opened, dark and luminous, reflecting the light patterns on her face. Any trace of the cold, formal air was gone, replaced by a breathtaking openness, a need that mirrored his own. The resonance, it is complete, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The blade, it has bound us utterly. The tension of the fight, the political pressure, the sheer strangeness of his situation, it all channeled into this singular moment of intense connection. His body ached, but it was a pleasurable ache, a readiness he hadn't anticipated. Her alienness wasn't a barrier. It was part of the intoxicating mystery, the unique resonance that drew him in. He lowered his head, and she met him halfway. Their first kiss wasn't hesitant. It was a collision of needs, a release of pent-up tension, a desperate soul-deep connection forged in the crucible of crisis and ritual. Her lips were soft, her taste unfamiliar, the kiss deepened by the overwhelming sensory input of the merged resin. He felt her respond with an equal, untamed intensity, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer until there was no space between them. The Vareth around them faded into the background, their collective resonance a distant hum compared to the storm raging within Kalen and Lyra. They weren't just kissing, they were merging, their very beings sinking on a fundamental level. This wasn't just physical desire, though that was potent. It was the culmination of the ritual, the fight, the blade's judgment, the raw vulnerability exposed by shared trauma. They broke apart finally, both breathless. Lyra's light patterns were slowly subsiding, leaving her face flushed, her eyes still wide and bright. We must complete the rite, she said, her voice still unsteady. The binding is acknowledged, but the ancestors require the full merging. She didn't need to explain. The resonance surging between them, the physical ache, the desperate intimacy of the moment made it clear. The accidental touch of the blade had started this. The forced proximity and shared danger had deepened it. The fight had proven it, and the resulting resonance had ignited a fire neither of them could deny. He was the blade carrier, the protector, the husband, and now he was irrevocably hers, and she, astonishingly, was his. The next step of the rite, the final binding, was no longer a mere cultural obligation. It was a powerful, resonant necessity, a physical manifestation of the bond forged in blood and light, and the unexpected song of an ancient blade. They retreated into the heart of the shrine, leaving the Vrath gathered outside. The inner chamber was quiet, filled with the faint, lingering resonance of the ancestors. Lyra moved with a newfound grace, shedding her outer robes, revealing shimmering inner garments that seemed woven from starlight. Kaelin watched her mesmerized. The resonance was calmer now, a deep, steady current connecting them, a silent conversation flowing beneath the surface. It wasn't just emotion anymore. It felt like mutual understanding, acceptance. Lyra turned to him, her expression serene but intense. Her light patterns pulsed a soft, inviting gold. The final binding is a joining, she said, her voice low, of spirit, of resonance, of flesh. It seals the bond acknowledged by the blade and witnessed by the ancestors. She extended a hand. Kaelin took it, her skin warm and smooth beneath his fingers. As their hands met, the resonance between them surged again, a powerful wave of connection that felt both ancient and utterly new. In our way, this is not a casual act, she continued, her voice a low murmur. It is a vow whispered through the resonance, a commitment witnessed by all who came before. She guided his hand to the skin just below her collarbone, where her light patterns were most visible. As his fingers touched her, the patterns flared, bright and intricate, forming complex symbols for a fleeting moment. Feel the pattern, she instructed. Feel the song of my lineage. Merge your resonance with it. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. His touch seemed to activate something deep within her, a cascade of light and feeling and subtle vibration that resonated through his own body. It wasn't just physical touch. It was sensory overload in the most profound way, merging the tactile with the resonance. He felt the deep history of her people, the weight of her responsibility, the quiet strength he had only glimpsed before. And she, he knew, felt him, his past hurts, his unexpected landing here, the burgeoning protectiveness and confused adoration he felt for her. This wasn't just sex. It was a merging of souls, a joining of destinies witnessed by the very essence of her ancestors. Her body was subtly different from a human's. Her responses communicated not just through sound or touch, but through the intricate dance of light and resonance. It was instructional in the most intimate way, Lyra guiding him with soft murmurs and shifts in her own frequency, teaching him the language of her body, the depth of their connection. It was slow, deliberate, building with a deep, pulsing rhythm that matched their joined resonance. Every touch, every caress, every breath felt charged with meaning, a silent dialogue in the language of light and energy. The culmination was not a peak, followed by separation, but a deepening, a merging that left them not depleted, but filled, their individual resonances now permanently intertwined, a single, harmonious chord echoing in the quiet of the shrine. Afterward, they lay together, their skins still humming with residual energy. Lyra's light patterns had settled into a soft, steady glow, radiating a profound sense of peace and belonging. She rested her head on his chest, her breath soft against his skin. He held her, the reality of their situation, married to an alien heir by cosmic accident and ritual obligation, still mind-boggling, but now layered with a surprising tenderness and rightness. "It is done," she murmured, her voice thick with sleepiness and something else, something vulnerable and warm. "The binding is complete. You are truly the blade carrier now." "Yeah," he whispered, stroking her hair. Guess I am. Just never expected this. She shifted slightly, looking up at him. Her eyes were soft, no longer strictly formal. The pattern is unpredictable, she acknowledged. But the blade, it chose well. He smiled, a genuine soft smile that reached his eyes. Glad one of us knew what was going on. She chuckled, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through him. Perhaps neither of us did, but the path is clear now. Lying there with her in the ancient heart of her world, Kalen felt a sense of peace and belonging he hadn't felt in years. The accidental touch, the baffling ritual, the dangerous fight, the overwhelming intimacy. It had led him here, to this unexpected bond, this alien woman who was now his wife. The political storm still raged outside. The Gore challenge hadn't vanished, but facing it together, bound by blade and resonance and a strange, deep love, felt like a challenge they could meet. They emerged from the shrine changed. Kalen felt the difference immediately. The resonance with Lyra was a constant, subtle presence in his mind, a low hum that let him feel her general emotional state, her location, her very being. Even when they weren't touching, it was like a part of him was now permanently tuned to her frequency. Lyra's light patterns had shifted too. They were brighter, more complex, and seemed to express a wider range of emotions than before, even when she maintained her outward composure. The Vereth watching them greeted their return with a mixture of reverence and excitement. The Gore faction, led by Cole, was silent, their hostile resonance muted by the undeniable power of the completed binding. Lyra, her posture regal despite the intimacy they had just shared, presented Kalen to her people. The binding is complete, she announced, her voice carrying across the plaza before the shrine. Kalen, the blade carrier chosen by the ancestors, is my bonded mate. He carries the blade, and he carries the future of the First Ridge. She met Cole's gaze, her own steady and challenging. The blade judged the trial. The ancestors witnessed the merging. The pattern is reaffirmed. The accidental blade carrier has become the true protector. Cole's face was a mask of unwilling acceptance. He couldn't deny the resonant power that now emanated from both Kalen and Lyra, the visible proof of their successful, potent binding. The ritual, however unorthodox its beginning, was valid by the deepest tenets of Vereth law. To challenge it now would be to challenge the ancestors themselves, a line even the ambitious Gore were hesitant to cross openly. The ancestors have spoken, Cole conceded, his voice grudging. His resonance was a tight coil of resentment. But the off-worlder is unknown, untested in the duties of a protector beyond single combat. The challenge shifted from ritual validity to practical leadership. Lyra didn't falter. He will learn, she stated, her hand finding Kalen's, their joined resonance a visible shimmer in the air. His path is now one with mine. His strengths will be the strengths of the First Ridge. Kalen, standing beside her, felt the surge of her confidence flow into him through their connection. He wasn't just Lyra's accidental husband. He was now ritually, fundamentally linked to her and her people. He had a purpose here, protecting this woman and the future she represented. His past felt distant, irrelevant. His life as a wounded healer, a disillusioned human drifting through the galaxy, was over. He was the blade carrier now. Over the next few cycles, Lyra began his true integration. She taught him about the governance of the clans, the intricacies of their relationship with the arid land, the sacred duty of the migrations. He in turn brought his unique perspective, his medical knowledge, his understanding of technology, his sheer stubborn human ingenuity. Their bond, amplified by the resonance, deepened rapidly. They spoke late into the night, sharing stories of their vastly different lives, finding common ground in duty, loss, and unexpected love. Lyra shed more of her formal exterior, revealing a sharp wit, a dry humor that mirrored his own, and a fierce loyalty. Kalen saw past the air to the woman, and fell more deeply in love with her alien grace, her quiet strength, her surprisingly warm heart, hidden beneath layers of cultural restraint. The Gore didn't vanish, but their opposition became political maneuvering rather than open hostility. They sought to undermine Kalen's position, questioning his understanding of Vereth ways, waiting for him to make a critical error. Lyra countered their moves, using Kalen's unexpected insights to navigate complex situations. During a tense negotiation over water rights, Kalen, using his medical knowledge, proposed a system of water purification and conservation the Vreth hadn't considered, turning a potential conflict into a collaboration. His alien perspective, guided by Lyra, was becoming an asset. Their shared life settled into a rhythm, days spent learning and leading, nights spent in the quiet intimacy of their bond, their resonances intertwined, a constant conversation of feeling and comfort. Kalen was no longer a bewildered outsider. He was a partner, a protector, a husband learning what it meant to belong. The arid season deepened, the twin suns beating down with relentless intensity. The Gore faction, their political maneuvers stymied by Lyra's adept leadership and Kalen's unexpected contributions, grew desperate. Cole initiated a new kind of challenge, not through Rukal combat, but through sabotage. Key water caches along the ancient migration route were poisoned. It was a devastating blow, threatening not just Lyra's leadership, but the survival of her clan during the perilous dry migration. Panic rippled through the Vareth. Cole seized the moment, broadcasting his accusations. The poisoned caches were a result of Lyra allowing an outsider to tamper with sacred resources. Kalen's alien influence had cursed them. The Gore's resonance surged, spreading fear and mistrust like a disease. Lyra's clan looked to her, their own resonance a mix of loyalty and desperate fear for their future. Kalen felt her anxiety through their bond. A sharp, painful spite. They seek to break the people's faith in the pattern, Lyra said, her voice tight. To prove the binding was a mistake. Kalen took her hand, his resonance flowing into hers, a steady counterpoint to the fear. We'll fix it, he said, his tone quiet but firm. My medical knowledge, the purification tech from my ship, maybe I can neutralize it. Using remnants of his crashed ship's filtration system and his understanding of organic contaminants, Kalen worked tirelessly. Lyra was by his side, coordinating her people, using her knowledge of the land and the water caches. Their combined efforts, guided by their intertwined resonance, were effective. They managed to purify several vital caches, enough to sustain the migration. It was a painstaking process, dangerous and exhausting, but working together, their bonds strengthening under pressure, they succeeded where Lyra's people alone might have failed. The crisis solidified Kalen's place. He wasn't just a ritual figurehead anymore. He was a vital part of their survival. He'd used his unique skills to save them. As the migration began, Kalen walked beside Lyra, the blade of lineage once again slung across his back, lighter now, more familiar. Their journey was arduous, the landscape unforgiving, but their people moved forward. Hope rekindled. Cole made one last, desperate move. He led a small group of Gore warriors in an ambush, aiming to seize the blade and kill Kalen, thus breaking the binding and plunging the clan into chaos. They attacked under the cover of a sandstorm, their movements hidden, their resonance masked by the howling wind. Kalen felt the attack through his bond with Lyra. Not a direct warning, but a sudden spike of fear and aggression from her general direction. He reacted instantly, drawing the blade. This time he didn't rely solely on the blade's guidance. His training as a medic, his quick reflexes under pressure, combined with the resonant power flowing through him. He moved with a speed and agility he hadn't known he possessed, blocking attacks, using the blade not just as a weapon but as an extension of his will, disrupting the attacker's resonance, leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. Lyra and her guards fought beside him. Their combat was a blur of motion, light and clashing resonances. Kalen found himself fighting to protect, not just Lyra, but her people, his people. He was no longer fighting for a ritual. He was fighting for his home. Cole himself lunged at Lyra, his eyes burning with fanaticism. Kalen intercepted him, blocking the blow meant for his wife. The clash of their weapons sent a shockwave of resonance through the air. Cole was a skilled warrior, but his attack was fueled by desperation and twisted ideology. Kalen, powered by the blade's ancient energy and the fierce protectiveness born of his bond with Lyra, was a force of nature. He disarmed Cole with a resonant strike, sending the Gore elder stumbling back. It's over, Cole, Kalen said, the words ringing with authority he hadn't known he possessed. The blade has judged you. Again, your path is broken. Cole glared defeated, but his resonance still simmered with hate. Lyra ordered the gore captured, not killed, a sign of her strength and mercy. The immediate threat was neutralized. The clan could continue their migration in relative peace. Under the vast, star-strewn alien sky, Lyra and Keelan stood together, watching their people move across the sands. The blade rested, sheathed, in Keelan's hand. Their resonances intertwined, a quiet, powerful chord of unity. Keelan had stumbled into this world, a broken human seeking refuge. He'd accidentally gotten married to an alien heir, navigated baffling rituals, fought for his life and her claim, and found purpose and love in the most improbable circumstances. Lyra, bound by tradition and duty, had found her unexpected protector, her partner, her husband, not in a chosen Virith warrior, but in a clumsy, sarcastic off-worlder. Their union, born of accident and sealed by resonance, was now the foundation of her people's future. He was home.